What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Martha Van Berkel of Schema App. And Martha, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And since this is part of the Top Agency series, there's a really good one with Todd Taskey. Todd Taskey runs the Second Bite podcast. He pairs private equity with agencies. He helps sell agencies. And he talked about the agency space, the valuation space, and some, just some of his journey in the private equity bridging with agency. Really interesting. Another really interesting one was Kevin Hurrigan of Spinia Tech. Kevin had an agency since 1995. So he talked about the internet landscape. He talked about the business landscape and the agency evolution. And Martha, I know we're going to talk a little bit about even the past year or two, there's huge changes. So he talked about some of those big changes throughout in the past couple of decades. Another one you mentioned before we hit record also was Tony Horton of P90X, not an agency one, but very interesting journey on his path to P90X and selling billions of dollars of content and DVDs and their programs. So check that one out and more on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually do that by helping you run your podcast, or an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. We call ourselves more like kind of the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing relationships, create great content, but most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way than profiling the people and companies I most admire and sharing with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce Martha Van Berkel. She's the CEO and co-founder of Schema App, and they translate web content to be understood by search engines and machines. Schema helps enterprise SEO teams develop a knowledge graph and drive search performance. And she has many superpowers, one of them being explaining AI search to marketing leaders. They've worked with some of the biggest companies out there. Some of their past companies they've worked with are Gusto, SAP, and many more. And Martha, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be fun.
Just start off talking about Schema App and what you do.
Sure. So you actually did a great explanation of it, especially sort of, I would say, like in this new world of AI. So historically, people knew us as sort of the people who translated their website really into the vocabulary that Google understands, called schema markup. And when you did that, you got these, really great features in search, like stars and price information, et cetera. But as the world's evolved and as we sort of have seen, more machines, so AI kind of playing out, we now sort of, also, and we've always done this, build knowledge graphs. And knowledge graphs are really sort of, that connected data story that helps them, those machines really infer things. And so I would say now we're sort of in the business of building content knowledge graphs for marketing.
What is a knowledge graph? How would you explain it to someone?
Yeah, so I usually explain it by introducing myself by saying, you heard sort of my relationship to other things in the world. So, I'm Canadian, I'm the founder of Schema App, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I used to own a 1965 Austin Healey Sprite, and my car was in the movie called Losing Chase that Kevin Bacon directed. And so a knowledge graph is where you sort of take information and you define sort of the relationships between other things to where you can make inferences. So if you've ever played the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game, you now know that you're 3 degrees from Kevin Bacon because I had a car and Kevin Bacon used to drive my car. And so a knowledge graph is where we take just like flat data and we define the relationships between it so that you can now make inferences in it. And that's really how Google works, right? Like they're trying to answer questions that people are putting in the search box. But now if you think of from an AI perspective, all these different AI applications are trying to answer questions, right? And make inferences. And so when you put your marketing data in this content knowledge graph, so you define the relationships, and that's like, what is this page about? How is it connected to other products or things on your website? How is it connected to like the founders or the authors? Then all of a sudden these machines can make, those 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon like inferences. So that's sort of what a knowledge graph is. It's been around for a long time. People know it as like the semantic technology kind of area. But it's really, really relevant because it helps large language models actually do things cheaper and more efficiently. So that's why, like, I would say like in the last year, it's become way more relevant.
I can see you put your mathematics and engineering background to use with this. But if you are listening to the audio, there is a video component, and we are on the Schema App website. And if you want to learn more about that and kind of go deeper, because this obviously has a lot to this, they have a page talking about the knowledge graph. And basically, to me, I think, as I understand it, it helps search engines pull and understand what's on your website so you can be ranked and people can find you easier.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Yep. And then there's some cool stuff we're doing around like helping content marketers understand where their content's at. If you really want to learn, like under resources, we have Schema School, it's called. And I'm on a mission to like educate the world about sort of not just like what this is, but like how it applies with them in marketing. So you can go, there's free courses about the basics of schema markup. We've just launched our one around like understanding what a knowledge graph is. They're pretty unique in market, and they're these like great 5-minute bites. So if you only have like, breaks between meetings, or sort of you want to just like take it in snippets, it's a really great resource for you.
Yep. So yeah, go to Schema App, and if you go under resources, there's an app school, and you can see there. You're kind enough. Maybe it's because you're Canadian. You're nice. You didn't charge. You didn't decide to charge for this for people.
No, because I see like if I educate the market and get the market super excited about doing stuff, we're the best solution out there to help you do it at scale. So go learn, figure it out, ask us your questions, and then we'd love to partner with you to help make it happen.
What are the common questions when a company comes to you? Maybe we'll take Gusto, for example, and we could talk about the Gusto journey. But what are they asking?
So
what do they want from you?
Yeah. So the first thing is like they often come to us when they've like tried to do this on their own. Like they've been like, Google's been recommending people do this since 2011. So it's not new from sort of like a search engine kind of optimization tactic or strategy. So they usually come and say like, tell me how you solve the pain that this is to get done, especially in enterprise where, they have like a more complex like CMS or website kind of infrastructure. So
is it a competitor is ranking? I mean, is the pain point when they end up coming to you, is a competitor ranking higher for a certain keyword, or what is like prompting them to give you a call?
The end game? Like the end game is, we want to get more leads, like, and more conversions off the web, right? So that's sort of like the primary challenge that they have. And then they know that this is like table stakes now. So they're like, I can't do this on my own. Like,
have they heard of this before? Like when they come to you, like, have they been like, we need to create a schema markup for our,
they usually know what it is.
They do. Okay.
Yeah, they usually know what it is. However, like I speak a lot, we do a lot of work in healthcare, as well as technology like Gusto, as well as in finance. And we're sort of now going and educating about like how search engines are really smart and really advanced and how they are like in large language models. And so how this is now something that like you need to do to stay competitive. And so I would say like, I'm now talking more and more to especially executives who are like, I'm losing to my competitors. Like, help me understand, what this means to me. And I think what's fun when we're talking to executives is that we're talking about like, other problems within the enterprise that they have around like agility, right? Or, the resourcing in IT, right? Like they only have, so many resources that they need to get done. And so it's more than just like getting the clicks. It's also about being the innovators, being the leaders. And that's, I think, where Gusto comes in. So Gusto, I would say, is one of those innovators or leaders. The team that at Gusto, so Harinder and Kirill, who are there, they actually didn't buy from me when they were at Adobe. So they decided their team wanted to do it in-house. And they felt that pain of doing it in-house. And then when they
what was the reason what's typically the reason people would choose to do it in-house? This feels like a very specialized knowledge to me.
It is. Well, they're sort of like, well, we're just going to do the basics. Like, why can't I just do the basics, right? And I think, 2-3 years ago, the basics were fine, right? Like there wasn't a compelling reason to build a knowledge graph, like to actually use like the language you've been using. You could just kind of optimize a page, and then that page was good, right? That page was going to perform and get you clicks and conversions. But the world's changed, right? Like the underlying technology now is really advanced. And so like it can understand what's on a page. It wants to know, again, the context of like, what is this product and how does it relate to the industries and the features and the problems you're solving? And by the way, I want to spend, Google, Bing, the least amount of money to figure that out, right? So one of the things we saw over the last 2 years is, the cost of indexing is increased. And so Google's cheap about it. Like they don't spend as much money to understand your site. And so this is really about you, making it easy for them, right? Because when you make it easy for them, they do the work and then they show you, right? So you're making it easy for them both to understand and then also make that inferencing. And so Gusto, like they're really doing more advanced things. Like they're wanting to innovate. They want to be the leaders in the market. And so they've been adopting some of our newest features around helping them build this semantic content knowledge graph. And those members of the team understand sort of the implications of that, or the reason why that's going to differentiate them. Because I don't know, I often like think future state where it's like, Google is like right now where people primarily go, but a lot of these open large language models are consuming the whole web. And so at what point are there going to be very niche services being offered that you need to make sure you're relevant in? And it's not just SEO at this point. It's like data consumption and data understanding. And so they really see both like the value externally, and then we'll likely partner with them also to understand how they're going to reuse this knowledge graph internally to understand like the maturity of their content and where sort of there's content gaps.
So they come to you at Adobe, right? First of all, how did they even find you?
Well, we happen to be good at SEO, right? So, when you work in the SEO space, so we write really great content. So one of the things, and I'm really a believer, like in organizations, like don't write like generic content, write like super niche specific content that like, really, really well. So if you go to our blog, like we're not writing about just, broad things. We're writing about very specific things like the anatomy of a knowledge graph, or schema markup in like very kind of specific things. So we work a lot in healthcare. So we were talking about like changes we're seeing in the vocabulary that help healthcare organizations lead and sort of stay innovative, and not just about what's happening, but our opinion on what that means, right? So writing a really awesome content. And then we do a lot of conversations like this, whether that be on podcasts or at conferences. My favorite thing, like my super strength is sort of, again, explaining and getting people excited about how this can help their organization, their marketing teams be the innovator, and how we really partner with them to do that work. And so that's sort of where I spend a lot of my time, just making sure people understand the opportunity that's available to them.
So they find you probably through some content that you've put out, in addition to your reputation, and they said, we're going to do the basics in-house, right? So then what happens next after that?
Well, it usually doesn't get done. In fact, like we just marked a deal lost, and I was like, great, put a 4-month reminder in your calendar, and you're going to reach out to them and ask how their IT team's doing. Their IT team's not going to have gotten it done, or if they've done it wrong. And then we'll give them evidence of like how we're getting results for our clients, how we sort of take the burden off IT and partner with them to make them the hero, that they get to do all the other things in addition to getting results. And then we usually sort of re-stimulate that conversation. And like I said, like building knowledge graphs, like this like semantic technologists, like there's not a ton of them. And then to do like something in-house in enterprise, In fact, there was a stat that like 75% of IT projects go over time and way, way over a budget. And so what's cool about what we do is that like it's a SaaS product, right? So like you only pay for what you're using. So you're not going over budget as you sort of grow, and you get it done within the first 30 days. So it's like it sort of like breaks down all those like headaches we have, especially in large enterprise with regards to the nature of IT, by sort of rethinking it, reimagining how you can do this advanced tech, but in a really agile way. And that's probably like the part that made my co-founder and I most excited about doing this, is just that like we're kind of tossing all the things we learned working in enterprise. So I spent 14 years at Cisco, and just like being like, well, what if that's not true? Like, what if we can like just totally change the mindset of like, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be slow. It doesn't have to be hard. Like, what if that's true? And we've proved it out. Like, it's awesome.
So did the people from Adobe then move companies to Gusto? That's
what happened? Yeah.
And so what made them finally decide at Gusto to engage with you?
So they worked with us at their previous company. So we were already working with their previous company. And so they got to come in and just like see it in action. And they were like, oh my goodness, like we can't believe how quick you can do. And then because it's complex, like we partner them with one of our experts. So we kind of take customer success and professional services and mash them together. And so we also are just like, oh, like something new comes out from Google. Great. Let's do it the next day. Let's have it live the next day. So again, sort of introducing that agility. And so I guess they fell in love with the fact that like we just could get this work. And so when they ended up at Gusto, they're like, this is a no-brainer. Like they did a ton of work. You can read it in the case study around sort of rethinking how they kind of develop their content plan and how they're telling the Gusto story. And so we're that kind of underlayer machine language, right? That's explaining that to the search engines.
So how did they end up using it? Like, what would be an example of how they end up using it, maybe to communicate differently internally or externally?
Yeah. So one of the examples I would use is sort of like we talked about content sort of being like a big driver of traffic and visibility. And so when you write a piece of content, when you're planning it, you're often thinking of like, okay, well, who's the author? What is the problem or challenge I'm going to talk about? If you're a product company, you're going to probably mention sort of the product. You're going to maybe even mention or talk about one of your customers that's doing it. And so what they did sort of through their work was, when they wrote those blogs, we sort of came up with a content structure that allowed us to understand where in the content they were going to mention their products or talk about the different customers. And therefore our tools could then start picking up those things and putting that into the data, that what's called the schema markup, so that, not only were they writing this like comprehensive, awesome customer story, but that this like underlying data layer, the schema markup, was able to start articulating that. And one of the things that like when you start doing sort of, the semantics, which is one of the things we wanted to highlight when we worked with them, is like being able to kind of really connect those dots with other parts of your website. So with the product page or with the customer page that you're talking about the story. And so we were able to do that with them. And the other piece was like they had a complex architecture. So again, getting it to work became sort of not hard. Like it was just something that we could do sort of through our simple JavaScript integration. So for them, again, they were trying to kind of make something move quickly, lead the market, and do something complex, both in the architecture as well as complex in the story they were telling. And again, through sort of like the relationships that you can build dynamically at scale with our stuff, they were able to do that.
So Martha, how would you define your company? Are you strictly SaaS, or are you consulting in SaaS or consulting agency in SaaS? How would you I don't want to put you in a box or anything, but
it's not like trying to put me in a box.
I'm going to try and put you in a box. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I would say when we first started, people would consider us, so we consider it like a solution sell. So it's software with high touch support. Now that the market's more mature, you're going to see us go way more SaaS because there's more kind of people knowing what they need to get done. But because of the complexity of building the knowledge graph, I think we'll always have a lot of help on onboarding, as well as sort of like making sure the quality of the knowledge graph is good. But yeah, we're a SaaS company with just a robust high touch support. So we don't just do customer success where we enable you in the tools. We also do some consulting to make sure that you're getting the right return. Yeah.
How did your services or products evolve? Because I know
Oh man, yeah.
you started this maybe 2013, so you've been doing this a while. What did it look like then, and what were some of the evolution pieces of your either service or product? Take me back.
Oh man,
original.
let's go way back in the way back. So my co-founder is my husband, Mark Van Berkel. So he is a semantic technologist. So he has the really unique skill in that he's a developer who also has a master's in semantic technology, who also has an MBA. And so back in 2013, he was, finishing his MBA, and he was like, there's got to be a real world application of the semantic technology, because he knew how powerful it was for like from a technology standpoint. And so 2013, he was still trying to do like, where can I kind of solve a problem that kind of relates? And it was in 2014. So at this point I was done at Cisco. I had just become a mom. And
because you were at Cisco for like over a decade, right?
I was there for 14 years. Yeah. I was an entrepreneur. So I'm like really good at like seeing opportunities, kind of getting early traction, selling people on ideas internally and externally. Like that's my skill. So as he was sort of like exploring, we came across this thing called Schema Markup. But in 2013, we actually turned into an agency. So we were basically had a product to teach small businesses how to manage their online presence, called Online Presence Coach. We have that site, but we mostly use it for testing these days. And we basically had broken down like really complex tasks into something they could do in 15 minutes. But we discovered very early on that these small businesses didn't want to do that work. And so by accident, we became an agency doing the work for them. And, at one point it was September 2015, I'll never forget it. And we're, sitting and we're like, how did we end up quitting our enterprise jobs to like start an agency? like we quit to start a product company. Like we wanted to create something that people use. And we were sort of, and I was like, that's it. Like, we're not doing this anymore. And we were just like, what are we passionate about? We were passionate about the product. We were passionate about, and so we had built at this point Schema App version 1, which is our editor. And we were using it for these small businesses because Mark was like, oh, it's way easier to build a tool than for me to like do this by hand. And it was like, great, we are going to just do this. And so what
did the first version do? The Schema App editor. What did it do?
It's actually still here. So it's actually like really awesome for generating semantic schema markup for a single page, but like still connecting the dots across your pages. So some of our earliest adopters are some, now experts sort of in this space as well. And we still have a version of the editor for like pages that are more static and then we also use that same editor basically to do all the administration for our tools like in-house. So that editor sort of still played an important role. But it was only good to do, you only want to enter the information and it's static for like 15 pages and then it becomes unmanageable. And so it was really in 2017 that we're like, we need to do something that scales, right? Because we had customers calling us being like, we think you do this. And so we had a data feed at one point that we were able to convert at scale, but we wanted to have an interface. And so our Schema App highlighter we launched in 2018. And at this point, Google had something called the Google Data Highlighter. So people kind of knew something similar, but Google was divesting from it because it was too hard to manage. And so creating this awesome opportunity for us to kind of come in the space. But, 2015 and 2016, like we were not making any money, barely any money. I had my second child at that point. And we can joke that in my revenue, you can tell when I went off, like, like I wasn't selling. So like, you can see like, oh, my son was born during that time. Our revenue bottomed out. That makes sense. And so we were like, we were in that sort of initial struggle of just like, something's got to change. And so 2016, when we fired our clients that we were doing SEO for, we really doubled down. And then we created this highlighter. And, it's
Really
amazing.
quickly, quick question
Yeah.
about the editor part. So just so I can understand, the editor, was it marking up where the issues were, and would someone actually manually fix all the stuff that it was marking up? Is that what the editor?
No,
No.
no, the editor is like just generating schema markup. So it's generating that data explaining what's on the page. So we would think of it as like a form, but it kind of forces you to do some things in a connected way. And then it would integrate with your website to automatically. So you're using like a SaaS product to kind of enter the data that's on the page and sending it to your site. But again, the idea of the highlighter is you actually like dynamically highlight and map things on the page, and then it updates dynamically. So we used to joke like, do schema markup with more coffee breaks because you're not like doing anything manually, right? Like,
And would
things are
that
dynamic.
basically make it more searchable for Google, or what's what is it actually the end result when that happens?
Yeah, so people would get like these rich results. So they would basically get beautiful, sort of like more real estate in search, and then that would increase the number of clicks. So, click-through rate would increase as well as number of clicks, which then sort of drives, if you think of your funnel, right? You're getting more clicks, you get more website. On the website, then you're looking to convert, and therefore you can get more business. So it would, click-through rate off of search would often, I joke 30 to like 300% increase. Like it depends on the content and depends on the output. But it was sort of this idea of like page by page versus like at scale. And like you can't do enterprise unless you're like doing some stuff at scale. And so 2018 was really that like beginning of that journey. But what I was going to say was, and I'm reading Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time, which is like so interesting as a founder because there's so many things I've already done, but he makes the comment that if you're doing what you love, like the results will come. And I think when I think about 2016 in those early days, we basically had a moment where like, we don't love what we've created. Let's double down on the thing that we're really passionate about. And then results came, right? And I share that because I think anyone who's sort of, if you're an individual contributor in a company, like I think it still really resonates as to like, when you're doing that thing you love, it really just flies.
So 2017, you have a scheme, you kind of recreate the product or you add on to it, and it's schema highlighter. What happens next in the evolution of the product?
Yeah, so before I go to the product, the
Okay.
market still like didn't really embrace all this stuff, right? Like we were still like under 20% of sites in the world were doing this. Like most people were like, oh, that's nice to do, but I don't need to do it. And so it wasn't until 2019 that like everyone was like, oh, I need to do this, right? And schema markup, like I said, it's been around since 2011. Like it's not new, but it just like wasn't a priority. And I don't think it was a priority. Like we were seeing amazing results, like I said, increased click-through rate, increased leads, great visual kind of changes in search. But again, it's really hard. And so it was like, am I really going to do the hard work in order to get that result? And most companies were like, no, I'm having a hard time doing the basic work. Like I'm not going to try to do the hard work. And then we know what happened in 2019. I was like, 2020 is going to be the year of schema markup. Like everyone's going to do this. And then we know what happened in 2020. But we did have a phenomenal year in 2020 because now digital played this huge role. And so you asked where our products went. We measure results. And so we also after 2020 started developing our schema performance analytics. So we have like an analytics platform that now allows us to kind of help companies measure the impact to their business and look at it in lots of different ways. In enterprise, looking at by line of business is really important because you have different stakeholders by line of business. You might want to look at it by like strategic kind of area. Again, looking at the website and proving that ROI, right? Being able to show that ROI. And so that's really been, I would say, over the couple of years, lots of other, we integrate with lots of different things, but those were like the big changes. And then in August of this year, there was a big change. So Google basically took away what's called the FAQ rich result. So this is a result where you could put it on any page. Like if you had a frequently asked questions on any type of page. And so companies loved it because it was very versatile while still getting you a really big change in what the visualization of the search is. So Google gave 3 days notice that they were going to take it away for everyone in the world. 3 days notice. And so imagine if you're a marketer, you're cashing in all these clicks, right? Getting all these conversions. And 3 days later, boom, gone. And so many companies, not just our clients, but like Google basically like halved how much traffic. Now, this wasn't just a change in schema markup. This was because ChatGPT and Search Generative Experience, which is Google's version of ChatGPT, and Bard, were trying to test and get real estate. And what do? They answer questions. And so it made sense that like, well, Google is not going to give those question and answers. That's not going to go to the site. They want that to stay in search. So this was a much bigger change. It wasn't just a schema markup change. This was, I would say, like a real hard evidence that like, even though Mark and I in January of 2023 were like, the world's going to change quicker. And like, well, how are we thinking about this? This was sort of the moment where we're like, we got to change now. Like there's no more waiting. And so we basically, we had this semantic knowledge graph technology always underneath. This was sort of like the foundation of who we were. And all of a sudden that was really relevant. And so we had clients saying like, do you sell the business? Like we went through like all the emotions in August. And we chose to go on the offense. So we chose to look at this as an opportunity to kind of showcase that like, we're just not, a SaaS platform that does this very specific SEO thing, but that we're a SaaS platform that future-proofs your marketing team because of how we organize your marketing data. And we basically spend I spoke at a lot of conferences at September, October, and November. And I'm happy to report that not only are we continuing to get results for our clients, but our clients chose to continue to partner with us like through this change to help them future-proof. And we even released a feature in November to kind of test, like it sort of helps us further build out and disambiguate in the knowledge graph. And that is in itself helping get higher click-through rate. So we sort of, did the messaging and then also provided new features that sort of, I would say, continue to reiterate that the knowledge graph is the foundation to performance in search. And it's working. So it's been a really kind of up and down, lots of change. But I'm just really excited. I think the changes in August were good news.
So when Google made those changes, did you have to make any changes within the software?
No. So we added this new feature at scale. So we had this feature before. It's called linking entities. So it's actually where you basically disambiguate. So let's say I've written a blog and I'm talking about Java, and we want to be really clear that I'm talking about Java, the programming language, not Java, the country, or Java, the coffee. And so it allows you sort of, if we were to think of that Gusto example where, I'm talking about this product very specifically, and sort of you're linking to the URL on your website that's talking to it, or I'm talking about this very specific HR topic, then you can actually say like, this is what the page is about. And you actually link to a Google Knowledge Graph or a Wikidata, definition of what that thing is. And this is making it absolutely clear to the machines on what it is that they need to understand. And so that feature, we just made it so it would work at scale. And that's what we've been testing and seeing incredible results for.
What does the team look like at Schema App?
Yeah, so we're about 28 people. We're across Canada. So we're primarily a Canadian team. So we went, I call it flexible first, but we're basically a virtual team during COVID. And, we have a lot of senior technologists, so people who know semantic technology. And then any developer that joins us is doing it. We have a customer success team, about 7 people, a small sales team that's going to be growing, a marketing team, and then our leadership team. Yeah.
I feel like you have to have a lot of technical people for what you do. What's been a milestone? I know you, it seems like almost at heart, even though you're engineer math, are a salesperson. It seems like you like people selling. What was a milestone of a client for you in the company?
Yeah. So when SAP became our client, so Acronym was an agency actually who was looking for the best in class solution and brought us in to see if we could help solve their problem. And my co-founder was an SAP consultant prior to becoming an entrepreneur. And so when we signed that deal, it was a big deal because it was like, wow, we are selling not only to a great company overall, but someone that, again, Mark had worked very, very closely with and sort of, I would say, also really appreciated their technology and solution of what they do. And so that moment was just one of those moments. And I try to remind my team, like we work with a lot of Fortune 1000 companies, like really amazing companies globally. And I get us to take pause every once in a while because it's like, look at who we work with. We work with some of the largest healthcare organizations. We work with some of the largest banks. We work with some amazing technology innovators. And, they choose to work with us because of our prowess and sort of what we do. And then I think also because our culture is to be transparent, honest, take ownership, do what we say we're going to do. And so like SAP was a big deal for us. Cisco, I'm still coming for you. So that's, I'll look forward to where I
Yeah, what are
celebrate
they waiting
today.
for?
I know,
You were with them for
seriously.
14 years. Come
Yeah.
on. What did you do for SAP?
So SAP, similar to Gusto, like really complex architecture, and they also like had a lot of different websites. So when we first started working with them, I think there was 30, 40 websites that they had to optimize, and they have a very small SEO team, right? So I think when most of these enterprise, they don't have giant teams who are responsible for doing this work. And so, it's like one technical SEO, we partner with them to be able to do everything at scale. So we help their content be understood and found to help them increase the number of leads that they're getting in order to convert business.
When you go into these sites just before you even work your magic, what mistakes do you see? What are common mistakes people are making with their content or their site?
Yeah. So often we're seeing just like, I'll say like no data architecture on their pages. Like they're just sort of like every marketing page is different. And if you think about like a user journey, like if you're looking through case studies, for example, you're looking for some type of structure as you go through. And the machines are no different, right? Like they're trying to do learning to say, like, what am I going to understand about these different pages? And so I think often it's like, there's sort of genius in having some structure and some sort of continuity sort of through your content. I think the other piece is just like basic things like performance. Like you've got to like people aren't going to wait around for your page and content to load. And so how do you just like make sure that you're continuing to be as quickly and fast as possible? Those would be two that jump to mind.
I'd love to hear some of your favorite tech or software that you maybe as a team use or you use personally.
Oh, what's some of my favorite tech? That's a good question. Like I'm a big collaborator, right? So you're right. Like I do have a very technical background, but I sort of love collaborating. So I would say today, just like all the genius things you can do to kind of bring information together and collaborate. And it's not like advanced tech, right? So it's like how do you pull people in a virtual world to like comment on Google Docs and like interact and integrate there. So I would say like less than tech, but I think it's like more around collaboration. I do use ChatGPT and actually Gemini last night I was playing with on Google to advance like admin tool, like admin tasks. So I use it for a lot of job descriptions. I use it to do a lot of research. I use it to like put teams together for my offsite. So I don't have to like, work that through. I have it shuffle and kind of reorganize things. Um, Other tech, I don't know. I do like things like Gong, or sort of like where you can record and share and tell stories. But again, this comes by my kind of sales product storytelling. You know, as a CEO, and like I am a sales CEO, like I want to make sure everyone is having the opportunity to hear what dots I'm hearing and connecting. And especially, I would say Gong, while I use it to kind of give feedback and coach my sales team, I love it for sharing customer stories with my product team so that they can hear, hey, like I had this conversation. And you know what we heard from those three customers? Like they're saying it in different words here. Go have a listen. And so I think that's a really powerful way of, again, bringing the team together, bringing everyone to kind of hear it in their own words and make their own interpretation and connect dots.
What about from a team perspective, like project management tools or any other tech you use internally?
Do I love them all? So we use Teamwork in customer success for project management. It does the job. Our CRM's Pipedrive, like again, it does the job. I wouldn't say I'm like so excited about it that I would sort of like speak from the hills. But it does the job.
What about some of your favorite resources, books wise? You mentioned Dan
Oh
Martell's
yeah.
book. What else? What other books do you like that you'd
I spend time
recommend?
reading. So I really like The Hard Things About the Hard Things. It sort of is a great leadership book around just like, anytime you have to fire someone or like, kind of reflecting on, I hired the wrong person and sort of like, again, changing mindset. So I've been doing a lot of work on just like, how do I look at things differently that takes the emotion and stress out of it? So I love that book for that. There's a book around The Ultimate Coach, which is I don't the author escapes me, but he's like the ultimate coach, and he's talking a lot about being. So how are we showing up and being within? And I would say like that's been a superpower I've been developing this year on just how are you showing up to your family?
Is that Alan Thompson and Amy Hardison? Is that the one?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's the one. And Hardison is the gentleman who's like, it's his story, but it's about sort of how do you show up. And I think, especially as we think about how do we be great people, being great people is more than just being a leader, right? It's about being a leader during the day and then showing up to your kids in the evening, or showing up to your partner, showing up to your friends in different ways. So I love that was something you were really passionate about the beginning. And I would say like, I try to imbue that into how I show up for my team at work, how I ask them to show up to our customers, so that we can also then be present to our families, because I don't see this as a sprint, right? Like if we see running companies as a sprint, like we'll all burn out quick, right? Not just the founders, but also the members of the team. And so trying to let people know like there's time to take care of yourself. There's time to have a sick day if you're not well, so that you can come back tomorrow and just rock it. And that comes from in 2019, sort of during our scaling years, I did get diagnosed with Lyme disease, and my brain stopped working, so I couldn't remember names and words. And I talk for a living, right? Like that's what I do. And it was a really good gift for me to say, oh, like I need to do it all. I need to be able to take care of myself and have a company where we create space for people to take care of ourselves, so I can keep doing this. And so I look at most challenges as opportunities now, because if I can look at me getting sick as good news, then I can look at anything as good news.
I know we have a few minutes, Martha, so I have one last question, but before I ask it, I just want to point people to schemaapp.com to learn more. And thanks for sharing the lessons, the journey. It's pretty remarkable what you've created and the companies you help. The last question is about the health scare. You had a health scare. How did it help you reframe the way you look at challenges? And Lyme disease is also a tough thing to diagnose, and oftentimes it goes misdiagnosed. So I don't know if you went for a long time without being diagnosed, trying to figure out what the heck it was.
I think I was just, so about getting diagnosed, so I was very lucky. I have a very good friend who's a very talented naturopath. And I think I just didn't know I was sick. I thought I was just tired. I had 2 young kids. I was running a business. And so I had the gift of a friend being like, Martha, this isn't normal. like let's sort of dig deeper. And she was creative about, or sort of knew about tests I could get in the US that we can't get in Canada, that helped me get a diagnosis. Getting treatment was also very different, but I just kept asking questions, and the people showed up with answers. And again, like Lyme is one of those, like it's a really hard disease to both manage and figure out. And I found the answers, and I found the doctors, and I found sort of the things that worked. And it, like, I don't know, like it was just like, let's just keep making progress week over week, month over month. And let's just keep making different choices that allow me to progress and keep doing the things. And I think now, like whatever challenge you send me, it's like, great, what's that next thing we need to try? Who are the people we need to connect with and ask for help with? And like, they're going to show up. The answers are going to show up, and the people are going to show up, and we're going to get a chance to try again. And so to me, that's I think why, like, not hard. We just got to try again. We just got to keep that attitude of like, there's answers out there and things it's hope, maybe. Like, I just always know that there's going to be hope. There's always going to be a next step.
Martha, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone, check out more episodes of the podcast. Check out schemaapp.com, and we'll see everyone next time. Martha, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
What I got, you get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like 100 grand.